Good afternoon. Welcome to Future World's Demo Day 26. Very exciting to see all of you here. Well, I saw most of you out there. I can see almost no one in here, but I can feel that there is a load of excitement because today we are going to be seeing some fantastic pitches from some wonderful startups at the start of a journey that could change the world, because that is what Future World is all about. It is all about helping brilliant scientists and engineers start journeys that really can change the world. That's why we do what we do. But there's a few practicalities. I should say there's no fire drills that are planned today, so that if there's an alarm, we should get out, and there are exits clearly signed all around. So there's a variety of ways that you can get out of the building. But why are we here? I mean, we're here to see some startups and some great startups to pitch, but why are we here specifically? Because, I mean, it's just a nightclub. And nightclubs are, two a penny, aren't they? There's nightclubs everywhere. I can't see Lowen, but Lowen's here somewhere, I'm sure. This is just a nightclub. And yet, 35 years ago, when this rat-infested bus depot was turned into a nightclub, the journey that started from there, when house music was just the preserve of muddy fields and raves that weren't sanctioned, it went on a journey to 40 UK top one albums, like #1 albums, 70 million records sold, ultimately a big exit to Sony Music. A journey that started in a rat-infested bus depot that defined an entire music genre here in the UK and certainly changed an industry. There are nightclubs and there are venues that are now protected London cultural icons on a par with Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. And this is only a car, right? I mean, and sure, it's not a Toyota Corolla, the world's top-selling car of all time that has sold more than 50 million cars. No, it's not that. This is an F1 car. But it's not just any F1 car. This is Red Bull's RB19. And for those who are familiar with that, it is something slightly different. This was a car designed by the legendary F1 designer Adrian Newey. And what a lot of people might not know is that 30 years earlier, Adrian Newey, when he was a student at Southampton, just like Lowen, the acoustic engineering student who then transformed a nightclub into a global sensation, Adrian Newey has transformed design of F1 cars down through the years. But 30 years ago, when he did his final year project, he studied ground effect aerodynamics in his final year here in Southampton, or in Southampton down on the south coast. And so years later, when F1 regulations changed and you were allowed to use ground effect aerodynamics, Adrian knew exactly what to do. And the RB19 is not just an F1 car, it is the most successful F1 car in history. Because when brilliant engineers know exactly what to do, they really can take over the world. There are cars and there are cars. Adrian Newey and his team have designed many cars that have transformed the world. Two students that it is great to talk about, students from Southampton who have done great things. Sadly, this week, the world has been talking about another Southampton student for all of the wrong reasons. One of our community, Henry Novak, who was brutally killed, and we mourn with his family the loss of a beloved son and a beloved brother. But it reminds us that we need to keep on working tirelessly against the tide of hate and division that would separate us, and we should celebrate our differences and our diversity as a city, as a university, because together we are stronger. And we see it in the startups that we support. We see it across an incredibly diverse student and research community, that in our differences, great things can happen. Because universities exist to give life-changing opportunities and to make the world better. And in Future Worlds, we exist to help people to achieve life-changing opportunities that will change the world for good. And this is just a boat, right? It doesn't even float. But this boat, at over 260 years old, is the longest serving commissioned warship in the world. It is still the flagship of the British Navy, the HMS Victory, which stands for not only incredible engineering, which it was in its time, but it stands for the incredible inspirational leadership of Lord Nelson, who was able to lead a team who followed him to a battle of almost impossible probability of winning, with an audacious and contrarian strategy that no one had ever tried before because of a conviction that that could win, and ultimately led to what is possibly the most miraculous naval victory of all time, with not a single boat lost against a vastly bigger and vastly outnumbered combined fleet. When Nelson and his team decided to do something different, it changed the course of history. And Future Worlds, we're just an accelerator, right? That's all we do. And yet, time and time again, we see people who did not think that they could be a founder, who didn't think that they would belong in the startup ecosystem, who didn't think that this would be a journey for them. They didn't know how they could take the steps from where they were to what they wanted to do. That time and time again, they have gone on that journey and launched startups that have changed the world. It comes down to brilliant people who have a vision and a boldness to do something that has not been done before. At its most basic level, it comes down to why or why not. Sadly, all too often, the brilliant people with incredible potential are told and asked by the people around them, why? Why bother? Why do you think you could do this? Why do you think this is possible? Why is it that you could do something that has not been done before? And all too often, and sadly, it is often people who have not been able to try it themselves, who their own doubts and failures have held them back, project that onto people with all the potential to make a difference. But when you change why to why not, and when you combine brilliant, brilliant people with a fantastic network of people who have been there and who have done it before, who have got the experience and the expertise and the wisdom to know what's possible, and ask those founders, why not? Why not bigger? Why not faster? Why not now? And why not you? Because that can make the difference between a pipe dream and realizing possibility. And that is what we exist for in Future Worlds. And that is what we celebrate on a stage like today, this afternoon, is brilliant people bringing incredible ideas that can change the world. And the ask of each of you is simply this: to come up to them afterwards around the stools in the room next door and ask them, why not? Why not? Why not you? Why not now? Why not bigger? Why not faster? Do not underestimate the difference that you can make by simply asking, why not? 35 years ago, Lowen, a student from Southampton, and a bunch of others asked, why not? And they launched a venue that has transformed an industry. Adrian Newey and his teams down through F1 history have consistently asked, why not? And between them, they have designed cars that have won 20% of all of the F1 races that have ever been raced under the leadership of one designer. It's incredible. From asking, why not? Lord Nelson and his team that was willing to follow him asked, why not? And they changed history. So today, I would beseech you, ask the founders that pitched today, why not? Why not you? And why not now? And on that note, I'm going to hand on to the wonderful colleague, Alice Iles, who leads all of our acceleration programs in Future Worlds, to give these founders the best possible start. So thank you, Alice. Comes the night.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Future Worlds Demo Day 2026. Head of Acceleration means that I get the privilege the honor of introducing you to our amazing startups today. And they have been on such a journey. And it's always just amazing to see them today, see them on stage, see them at their best. But I've seen them for the last 6 months and seen them going on this incredible transformation, both commercially and personally. If you'd asked me maybe last year, what is Future Worlds and what do you do? I'd have said, well, Future Worlds is the startup accelerator at the University of Southampton. We help staff and students to commercialize their research and their ideas. That's still true. We still do that. But very excitingly, this is actually not the first time I've had the privilege of introducing founders at Demo Day this year. So over the last year, we've launched 2 national programs where we're helping academics from across the UK to commercialize their research in AI and silicon photonics. So some of you will have seen us back in March at our Air Demo Day. So if you're a returning customer, great to see you again. If this is your first time, don't worry, you can come next year. So what's really exciting about today is that we're not just launching our startups that have been on our cohort this year from Southampton, but also that have been on our Silicon Photonics program that we partnered with Cornerstone, the foundry at the University of Southampton. And I actually told the deputy director to sit in the front row, and I promised I wouldn't pick on him, but I lied. So if you're interested in Silicon Photonics and you want to find out a little bit more about what Cornerstone do or what we do on our program, you can speak to Callum and myself afterwards. And okay, so it's great that I get to be involved in these programs and help the founders, but I wouldn't be able to do that without all the other people involved. So absolutely the Future Worlds team, all of our sponsors who kind of make everything we do and everything we put on achievable, but also all the people that are in this room. So I actually can't see any of you because it's very bright, but I do know that there are lots of you here that have been working with the founders over the last 6 months, over the last few years, to kind of get them to where they are now. Our mentors, our investors, the people that give their time every week to go through pitch decks, to help them look at forms, any of those things, and to really just be that support network. So thank you so much, because we really couldn't do that without you. And it is always amazing to see you. And thank you very much for being here. We will have an opportunity through the pitches to ask questions to our founders. So make sure you can scan the QR code now and have it ready, but you will see it again later, so don't worry if you miss it. But you can get on the Wi-Fi as well in case there's no signal down here. So make sure you're asking them some really great questions. And if you don't get that opportunity, they will all be back in the expo at the bar later on this evening, so you'll be able to see them then. Without further ado, I'd like to start by introducing you to the first founder of the evening, who actually was on our cohort program last year, and I gently encouraged him to come back and pitch to you this evening so you can see the incredible journey that he has been on. Tasmiat Rahman.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tasmiat. I'm CEO and co-founder of SKAIY, where we deliver ultra-accurate solar forecasting for volatile power markets. Now, solar energy is surging faster than any other energy source in history. And that's great for our clean energy transition, but leads to a lot of volatility within our grids. Now, solar assets have to commit to forecasts in advance. If they fall short, they end up paying imbalance penalties. And if they over-forecast, they end up wasting and curtailing all of that clean energy. Either way, these utilities are losing billions and almost up to 20% of their revenue. And the problem is getting a lot worse. We're shifting to a much more dynamic market of real-time balancing, and the assets are getting a lot more complex and scaling in size, from legacy sites of 50 megawatts, which is the size of Hyde Park, to new sites that encompass the entirety of the city of Bath. Current tools are just not good enough to deal with these dynamic market shifts we're seeing. The data is either too coarse or just doesn't come in fast enough, and typically missing sensors that really map the physical patterns to the power output. And this is exactly why we built SKAIY. We utilize our own camera systems, advanced irradiance sensors, and edge-based AI devices to really track that local cloud movement and map it to physical radiance output. And our computer vision models have outperformed satellites by up to 50%. And because we're deploying it on the edge, we're able to deliver these forecasts much faster and more securely. We're scaling our business through 4 key customers. You have the asset owners that's able to optimize their power purchase agreement using our hardware. You have the route to market traders that can make much better intraday trades using our live feed. You have optimizers that can use real-time dispatch of batteries using our forecast. And of course, grid operators that can reduce their spinning reserves and also make better decisions on curtailment. And we currently have proof of concept agreements or live pilots with all of these tier 1 energy brands. And the market for solar is huge. We expect 7 terawatts to be deployed by 2030. And for us to hit our target of 50 million ARR, we need just 20 strategic buyers of the hundreds that currently exist right now scaling large assets. And we do this through a pricing model of just £500 per megawatt per year, which is a small fraction of the tens of thousands of pounds they're currently paying in imbalance penalties. And there's an experienced team. I myself have over 15 years experience in solar R&D and most recently awarded the Royal Academy of Engineering Enterprise Fellowship. And my co-founder Duncan has 20 years experience both as a founder and an innovator in climate tech, most notably his exit with Moixa. And we have a strong technical team behind us as well. Expertise in power systems engineering, optics engineering, and of course, computer vision. And today I'm looking to close our £2 million round, of which we've already raised £500,000 through early angel investors, including Sam Laidlaw, ex-CEO of Centrica, and Ian Marchant, ex-CEO of Southern Scottish Electric, real innovators and leaders in the industry we're entering. In addition to that, early funds from One Planet Capital and Climate VC. We've also secured £500,000 from Innovate UK grant funding. And today I'm seeking a further £1 million to help us to deploy our first network of SKAIY camera systems, grow our team, and reach that initial revenue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Taz. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure that you're scanning the QR code and getting your questions over to Taz. But I actually have a few that have already come in for you. So who would be your ideal first customer?
So one of the pilots we have is with EDF Renewables, and typically somebody like them is absolutely our priority customer. They own the asset, they also trade the asset, they also have co-located storage. So there are multiple ways that we can sell that data and fix separate revenues of paying for them.
I have a question from Kumi, who's in the audience. So at a retail level, how can we help residential homeowners to be rewarded proportionally for exporting electrons? Namely, how can the DNOs be held more accountable?
That's a great question. So I don't know for those, if you have solar on your roofs, but typically you'll be given an app and it will tell you how much you're going to get tomorrow. And typically that's a terrible forecast. And I think what we can do is for large assets, because our SKAIY camera systems can see almost a 34-kilometer view, we can tackle lots of acres and acres of land. I think new housing developments where you've got tens of thousands of homes can benefit from our data stream to better manage their solar production, better manage any battery systems they have, and make more profitable and reduce their energy prices by selling back to the grid.
So I have a question from Ben. So I know you mentioned your pricing strategy a little bit earlier, but how did you validate this willingness to pay?
So the first thing we did for actually understanding how these utilities and also grid operators are able to pay for this is if you look at Elexon, it's an open public data set for how much utilities said they were going to deliver for each settlement period. On Elexon, you can also see how much they then went on to deliver. So that prediction was made by existing forecasting tools. And if you look at different solar assets, and importantly, if you look at the scale of the solar assets, when you go from 50 megawatts to the largest one in the UK at the moment, which is 350, they're paying tens of thousands of pounds per megawatt a year, hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not millions on each asset. And that's publicly available data. So the pain was very much obvious. And then, of course, as we do these pilot discussions, we've also already started to negotiate about paid pilots.
Great. Krish would like to know, what's your go-to-market strategy?
At the moment, our plan is to deploy out to really large asset owners. So the likes of Greencoat, who own 60, 70, 80 assets, do a pilot with them for 3 to 6 months and then scale out across their portfolio. So that's why I was saying about our market strategy is to really target roughly 20 strategic partners that can each take about 5 gigawatts of their portfolio and strategically get onto all of their assets within one portfolio. These asset owners and traders, they don't trade individual assets. They trade as a 40, 50, 60 amass site. And so if you think about that, like that adds up into several gigawatts just through one customer.
Awesome. Richard would like to know, what platforms do you use for your cameras and sensors? So aircraft, drones, question mark.
Great question. And actually, if you come join our stand at the exhibition, you can have an actual look at one of our units. No, so these are about sort of this size. They're deployed on site, typically on an inverter station or some sort of cargo that's on the asset itself. We try and be as frictionless as possible for the asset owner. And at the moment, we're actually discussing with not the asset owners, but developers that go out to asset owners to get that job and say to them, actually deploy our hardware right at the beginning and actually absorb a lot of that cost in the initial capex of these utilities.
Awesome. Ebby has asked, could you share some stats on how much your solution can save on asset imbalances?
Yeah, so what we hope to save is, so we expect tens of thousands of pounds in penalties. By putting an uplift of about 40 to 50%, we hope to reduce that imbalance penalty by about £4,000 of that £10,000 bracket. And then we charge somewhere between £500 to £1,000 for that service. That's something we are doing right now with our pilots. That's the main question that everybody has, right? You make much better forecasts, but how does that actually translate into better trades? And through EDF's pilot agreement, we've actually really agreed a good way to run that pilot to be able to see. We run a digital twin of our data running the trades compared to real trades that are done to have a fair benchmarking on that opportunity.
Thank you very much, Taz. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions, but I do see some. So if you didn't get a chance to get your question asked, please do go and speak to Taz at the expo after. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Up next, I would like to welcome to the stage Renata Konadu.
The e-commerce, does not work for millions of businesses in Africa. Hello, my name is Renata, and after 5 years of running my online business in Ghana, I learned the hard way that foreign tools like Shopify do not work for how we sell in Africa. This is why, together with my co-founder, we built SellQuic, the e-commerce platform for how African businesses actually sell. So, the e-commerce in the Western market, like the UK here, is built around a simple idea. That is, a customer lands on a website, adds their products to carts, checks out, and get the goods delivered, right? Well, there are two big problems with this for over 218 million businesses in Africa. Now, the first big problem is that an online vendor has to spend 5 to 7 hours every day chatting with their customers to build trust before orders are placed. So we're talking conversations first before checkout. And the second big problem is that a typical vendor sells retail to a customer, sometimes sells wholesale to another customer, runs what we call a pre-order system, and also operates a mini importation. Unfortunately, there is no system or platform that currently integrates all 4 selling models. Our competitors are focused only on the retail side with little automation. So, SellQuic solves this by first of all providing a simple dashboard that integrates all 4 selling models for the typical vendor in Africa. And this enables them to manage, to track, and also grow their business. And secondly, most importantly as well, SellQuic provides the AI conversational layer that automates the repetitive chat for the vendors, saving them 5 to 7 hours of productive time. So The market, as you see, represents a $34 billion opportunity. And for us at SellQuic, we are focusing on Ghana and Nigeria alone in the next 3 to 5 years with a combined ARR of $28 million. We are currently piloting in Ghana with over 500 users sign up and over 50 of our active vendors testing the AI conversational layer. And the team comprises myself, the CEO and the founder. I have lived and I am still living the problem that a typical online vendor in Africa faces. So I understand firsthand the pains that they're going through. And my CTO, who is the software engineer building the platform, he has over 6 years experience working with vendors across Africa. We are supported by 2 incredible advisors helping us with marketing, partnership, and growth. And I'm happy to let you know that we recently launched our MVP on the 1st of June. And looking at the momentum that we've built with our beta testing, we are confident that by September, we will have over 1,000 users sign up and over 100 of them paying. And this will give us the basis for our pre-seed round in the Q4 of this year. So today, we are looking to engage with investors, with partners, with advisors who share the vision that the future of e-commerce in Africa is exactly what SellQuic is offering. So join us as we build the infrastructure to support Africa's e-commerce. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. So if you haven't done so and you haven't got it ready, get your phones out now and scan the QR code so you can ask Renata some questions. So while you're doing that, I do have a couple coming in now. So Anna would like to know, where do you see SellQuic in the next 5 to 10 years' time?
That's a great question. So in the next 5 to 10 years, we believe that SellQuic will become the e-commerce ecosystem that powers the small businesses in Africa, both the Anglophone and the Francophone countries in Africa. We want SellQuic to be the central sort of e-commerce go-to for all these online vendors in Africa.
So that links quite nicely to Chris's question in terms of, so how is SellQuic different from just other e-commerce platforms?
Yeah, that's a great question. So majority of the e-commerce platform we see focuses only on the retail side. That's the basic assumption. So it's built from the ground up thinking everyone is going retail. But in most of the African countries and close to where I come from, Ghana, Nigerian market, we sell across different models. And therefore, SellQuic start from the ground, understanding the seller's behavior, and we build according to their behavior. We build with them as their selling models change. And this separates us from what our competitors are doing.
Okay. Laura would like to know, how do sellers pay for using SellQuic?
Yeah, that's another great question. So currently we have 3 main revenue streams. The primary one is subscription. So that's a monthly subscription that our vendors pay. So that's the primary one. And then we have the secondary one, which is where we get a transaction revenue based on the number of revenues or transactions, that goes on the platform. And the last one, we call that the AI top-up credit. So it's pay as you go for the vendors who use the AI to help automate that repetitive chat. So we've got all these 3 streams of revenue coming through. Yeah.
And I guess you can't be the only person working in this space. So Dan would like to know, how is the competition landscape?
Another great question. So Shopify, as I initially said, is the biggest and the global one, but it does not fit a majority of the African market because these small vendors in Africa, they're not able to move from one theme to another or, that kind of platform that Shopify provides. So in Africa at the moment, Nigeria and Ghana specifically, we have about 4 main competitors. However, they are solely focused on retail alone. From our investigation and the earlier conversations with our vendors, it seems these platforms were built and given to them. But we are doing the reverse. We're building with them, asking exactly what they want, how they wanted to serve them. And that's how we are building differently from what our competitors are doing.
So again, very sorry, only time for one last question. So do find Renata after and ask her your questions. So Eleanor would like to know, are existing apps and channels like these things you've already mentioned easily integrated into your platform?
Yes. That's a brilliant question. Yes. So currently we are working on finalizing our MVP, which will now be launched in July. But only few of the third-party tools are integrated on SellQuic at the moment. We're looking essentially at the ones that the vendors, the typical vendors, want to use, what they can afford. Because in addition to being able to afford, it's also whether they can use it. So it's not every global tool that is on our platform. Is it easy for them and can they afford? So we have a few, that integrates.
Thank you very much, Renata. If you didn't get to ask a question, please do find her afterwards. Before we continue, have a quick note from Ben.
Before I introduce the next founder, I've actually just launched a new offshore investment vehicle. If you'd like to invest in any of today's startups tax efficiently, scan the QR code on screen now. Do not miss out. Except it's a scam. I'm not the real Ben. Would you have scanned it? Could you tell I was a deep fake? If not, this next pitch is for you. Over to you, Jack.
One rule has held for your entire life. If you can see their face, if you can hear their voice, you know it's them. But as you can see, that rule no longer stands. My name's Jack Corbett. I'm the founder of HonestID, and we're here to restore that trust. Deepfakes and voice clones make malicious actors indistinguishable from your colleagues, customers, and loved ones. A finance worker, Arup, authorized $25 million in transactions after joining a Zoom call with what looked and sounded like the CFO and other senior leaders, all of whom were deepfakes. 5 in 6 of Interpol's top fraud threats now rely on impersonation, and AI-enabled fraud is 4.5 times as profitable. So what can we do? There are 2 existing camps trying to solve this. ID verification asks you to hand over government documents or biometric data, meaning that any breach they suffer exposes your most sensitive data. On the other hand, detection monitors all of your communications, sacrificing your privacy, and they will always be one step behind the latest AI models. Instead, HonestID leverages human connection to prove you are who you say you are, meaning it's privacy preserving, there's no documents, no monitoring, and it works no matter how good AI gets. So how does it work? Well, every verification is built on 3 pillars. A real biometric identity verified on device, a phone bound to you with cryptographic proof of possession, and a verification intent bound to a specific action like a $1 million payment and the channel that it came through. With those in place, you can verify anyone with a simple peer-to-peer challenge. For most contacts, that's a single tap to approve or deny. But for your closest connections, that's reinforced with an honest key. A personal word or phrase rooted in shared experience that must match for the verification to succeed. We've spoken to leading firms across law, finance, and consulting, all who are deeply concerned but have no defense in place. Our apps are built, iOS is live in test flight, and Android's in final testing. Our patent is filed covering the full bilateral verification protocol, so that means end-to-end encryption, a zero-knowledge architecture, and post-quantum ready. And we're finalizing a channel partnership with Kipu Networks, an award-winning cybersecurity distributor, and onboarding them for our first enterprise pilot starting in a few weeks. The global identity verification market is growing rapidly to $34 billion. And our addressable market, calculated bottom up across the most exposed sectors in the Five Eyes, EU, and Singapore, is $5 billion. And within 5 years, we're targeting $80 to $120 million in ARR. To do this, we start with pilots, focusing on the most exposed teams, like finance and client-facing. And then we expand firm-wide, scaling the number of seats so that everybody can verify. The Kipu channel offers 40-country distribution, sales, and support, and every enterprise verification extends to clients, meaning every new deployment grows our network. I was a VP lead security engineer at JP Morgan Chase, where I spent the last 6 years delivering enterprise-grade cybersecurity. I have a first-class degree in computer science, and I've trained over 5,000 people on deepfake threats. I'm also supported by some incredible mentors and advisors, including Dave Hughes from Datadog and Craig Jones, the former director of Interpol, who is here today, and had this to say: "This secures the one thing that AI can't replicate, real human intent." We're raising 500K pre-seed to give us 18 months of runway, with our founding engineer ready to join post-funding. This will enable us to convert the pilot to paid by the end of the year, and by Q3 next year to secure 20 to 25 paying firms to get to $1 million in ARR. Join me in restoring trust in digital communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. So I promise this QR code is safe. So please do scan it and get your questions in for Jack now. So Aya's asked a question, which I think maybe a few of us would be thinking.
Yep.
What happens if I forget my honest key?
Excellent question. And of course, we have got a plan for that. So your honest key, if you've forgotten it, if either of you have forgotten it, there's a mechanism within the app. You tap, I've forgotten. And we have a separate challenge where you ask each other a question that only the other would know. And this is rooted in things that have worked in real cyber attacks. So some of you may be familiar with the Ferrari situation, where they foiled one of these attacks because the CFO asked the CEO what book he recommended him last week. And of course, the attackers had absolutely no idea. So once you've done that exchange, you must both approve the other's answer, and then you will have the option, of course, to agree a new honest key once you've been verified. So even if it's forgotten, of course, we all forget our passwords or things like that sometimes. You're not stuck, and you can still verify.
That's good to know, because I do forget my passwords a lot. Kumi would like to know, what was the rationale behind choosing like enterprise as your go-to-market versus consumer?
Absolutely. So it's a really valid question because, of course, these attacks affect all of us. And there have been some really high-profile examples of, in the consumer space, of sort of ransom attacks, fake kidnappings, all sorts, because, of course, AI makes it so convincing now. Ultimately, businesses feel this the worst, and the impact, I mean, you saw in the Arab example, $25 million in a single attack. They feel the pain the worst in the financial sense. But of course, we want to make sure that this technology is also available to consumers. So it will also be available on the App Store in the next couple of months for anybody to use, because we want to make sure that it's not just businesses that are being protected.
And Billy would like to know, how is this superior to the other kind of authenticator methods that we currently have available?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Most of the authentication these days is based on you proving your identity to a server. So we prove to companies that we are who we say we are. But the challenge is now, we need to make sure that that is a mutual proof. They need to also prove to us that they are who they say they are, especially in a client dealing situation where they may be asking you to transfer large sums of money. Because these things exist, we have to make sure we have a solution to verify. So this is all about peer-to-peer, human-to-human verification. Is the person on the other end of any communication channel the person who I think it is? And this allows you to find that out in a matter of seconds.
So slightly anonymous LP is potentially interested. So they would like to know, are you asking for enough investment? So,
interesting. Well, I'd like to speak to you afterwards, LP, whoever you are.
What could you achieve maybe if you had more money?
Absolutely. So, of course, 500K, we're keeping relatively conservative to make sure that will enable us still to bring on staff. And of course, I mentioned about the founding engineer who's absolutely ready to join as soon as we're funded. If we were to be able to raise more money, which would of course be fantastic, then we'd be able to scale much faster. So we'd be able to do more direct sales in the early days rather than relying as much on the channel. And of course, we'd be able to bring in more engineering and potentially sales in-house. So of course, more money would enable us to move a whole lot faster. So LP, please find me afterwards. I'd love to chat.
Tom would like to know, like, what user actions do your zero knowledge proofs verify?
So anything, ultimately. So I wasn't able to show it in the 4 minutes, so I can obviously give you a demo in the stage out there. But the verification intent, it gives you a category that you can provide, but you can also specify a detail manually if you want to. So at the moment, you could pop in there literally anything. So a phone call about X, a message about this. In the future, also, we're looking to plug into enterprise communication tools directly. So Teams, Outlook. So rather than you having to then type that information in, that actually gets automatically populated, and you can directly reference the email or the message that you're looking at in the system.
So we're all very kind of data conscious, or we should be. So Dara would like to know, what data do you need to collect to perform the verification?
Yeah, so as we collect as a minimal data as we possibly can. So I mentioned obviously in the pitch that it's end-to-end encrypted, so we can never read any of your honest keys, your questions, or your answers. We do maintain some basically small metadata that explains who you verified, what the outcome was, and what you were verifying. Because of course, in an enterprise perspective, that's really good for threat intelligence, and it's also good for responding to attacks. One of the situations that this is really useful in is, for example, if a client has had a phone call from someone who is an imposter, obviously they then start a verification, and that's a way for that law firm or that financial institution to know that someone is being impersonated. So it's all really valuable data and threat intelligence to those organizations by leveraging this app. So yeah, absolutely, data privacy is at the core of this, and we want to minimize everything where possible.
So Scott would like to know, so you talked earlier about this like 25 million loss. So would you entertain a revenue model that was linked to the value of fraud prevented?
That's a great point, and it would probably make me a lot more money, to be fair. So it's a really, really valuable one to raise. Ultimately, the pricing at the moment is based around we want to encourage people to use it as much as possible. A lot of our competitors are based on the number of verifications you do. You're billed based on that. We're able to offer a flat rate because we don't need the compute to actually analyze the video or the audio. And so that's a real advantage that we want people to adopt it and use it as much as possible. But of course, as things go on, we're confident that that particular mechanism will be a great way for us scaling this around across this whole organization. Because if we start with a pilot, if we're able to stop one attack that saves them $25 million, then I think that conversation to say, do you want to roll this out firm-wide becomes a whole lot easier at that point. So absolutely, it's a great lever that, if we can save big numbers, and I'm sure that can help us to scale the business as well.
Thank you, Jack. That's all we have time for, but please do see Jack after in the expo and see a little demo of his technology. Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you.
I would like to welcome to the stage our next founder, Ali Masoudi.
Hello, I'm Ali, founder of Nexinos, a new generation of sensors for monitoring critical structures. Everything that we use gets transported by sea. And the cargo ships and tankers that transport these goods require regular maintenance, once every 2 to 5 years. A maintenance and inspection that lasts up to a month and can cost up to $5 million. Across global fleet, that amounts to $26 billion, a cost that you and I end up paying. And yet, the operators has no way to know what's going on inside their structures between these two inspections. It's like us going to doctors once every 5 years to do full body scan and hoping that nothing goes wrong with our body. But evolution has a solution for us. We have a nervous system that tells us what's wrong with our body and where it hurts. Ships don't have a nervous system. As a result, a small issue gone unnoticed ends up being a large issue down the line. In one case in 2023, a small corrosion went unnoticed on a ship, and a 10,000 pounds repair job turned out to be 800,000 major overhaul. At Nexinos, we have a solution. We have a digital nervous system. We have our vessel. We integrate our optical fiber to the vessel, which is the nerves of the ship. We connect the optical fiber to our interrogator, that's the brain, and on a single unit that allows us to measure vibration, strain, and stresses at tens of thousands of points throughout the structure. Now the operators can understand what's wrong with the ship as they emerge. We are offering our systems as a hardware and software as a service to the clients. The market opportunity for this technology for shipboard condition monitoring as a service is $11.2 billion, but that's not the only market opportunity that we have. Indeed, any large structures that require monitoring and inspection can take advantage of our technology. That expands our market opportunity to nearly $60 billion. Our technology offers one of the best-in-class sensitivity, while at the same time, it has one of the lowest cost per node, a combination of which allows the digital nervous system concepts commercially viable. The team is myself with 15 years of experience developing this technology, and Gilberto, my advisor, with 25 years of experience in the field of photonics. Since incorporation, we have demonstrated our technology through various field trials and published our results in ISI journal. These activities has generated more commercial interest in our technology. To date, we have generated £260,000 in revenue through sales of optical interrogator and optical fiber. Going forward, we are going to partner with major shipboard condition monitoring companies to conduct trials with them in order to validate our technology with an aim to launch our product commercially by 2029. For that, we are raising 1.1 million at the end of 2026, of which 350,000 pounds has already been secured. This gives us 2-year runway to modify our technology for maritime industry. And with that, we can stop paying $26 billion each year. Thanks.
Thank you, Ali. So please do get your phones out, scan the QR code. I'm going to watch you do it. Don't make me pick on you. So everyone get out your phones and make sure you're asking Ali some questions. I'm waiting to see you go. I will pick on people because I know who's here. So even if I can't see you, I know you're here. I got a couple just here. So Mohammed would like to know, who would be your ideal investor?
The ideal investor would be someone who has links with maritime industry and knows the industry well, so it can kind of link us directly to the end users.
Yeah. Tom would like to know, how does the cost of installation compare to the potential cost savings for a typical vessel?
So the model that we are doing is basically two models. One is the installation cost of the fiber that we cannot avoid. So whoever is going to use it is going to shoulder the cost of installation. But the hardware and software as a service, the model will be that then we provide the unit and then we charge them monthly or annually with the 3 to 5 years contracts and charging them using the hardware and software.
Bob would like to know, so why is maritime your beachhead market?
So we were initially aiming to do aviation because that's fancier. But what ends up being is that that's a lot more difficult to get into. Then we moved to wind, and then we've been told that still it's difficult. The ship seems to be the easiest one because you have a massive metal sheet that you can easily put your fiber on. So the idea is that we initially start with the maritime industry, and then once we've developed the technology, then we move up to the others. The good thing is that we can use lots of things that we've learned and we develop for maritime into other sectors.
So I now have loads of questions. So thank you, everybody. So after maritime, what's that kind of next market you'll target?
We've already in discussion with some of the largest wind turbine manufacturers. So probably that's going to be the next one. Again, in the middle of these things, other people coming up with other sectors like car industries, some others that may be easier for us to tackle, but it's going to be ideally maritime, then it's going to be wind, and then the petrochemical and aviation next.
Okay, so Tim would like to know, so how does the technology discriminate between kind of structural or engine faults? Are they not confusingly similar?
So the idea is that you have 10,000 sensors, right? So by combining lots of these sensors, you should be able to identify, and we can do a strain and vibration. So the mode that you're doing this measurement is going to be different. So by combining all the sensors and looking at the frequency domain, time domain data, we should be able to identify, differentiate between thinning of the metal plate versus the vibration of the engine noise.
Interesting. And Scott would like to know, what's the lifetime of your product? So how much maintenance is required at frequency and cost, I guess, compared to the traditional methods?
The good thing is that we are just piggybacking along the telecommunication. The optical fiber and the technology developed are very well developed and they're robust. The telecom cable that sits under sea is supposed to last 25 years. We use the same fiber, we modify it for our application, and we connect it to the lasers and the modulators that use in a telecommunication. So the optical fiber is passive, so it should last more than 25 years. And most of the components, like the laser, they say the timeline, the lifetime is 5 years. They usually last a lot longer. So it's no maintenance kind of sensing technology. And if anything goes wrong, it's very quick to repair.
Okay, that's great. So Kumi would like to know, like, what are the largest barriers to adoption and how do you plan to overcome them? And I guess they might be slightly different depending on the different industries that you're looking at as well.
Adoption is an interesting question. The adoption is that what we are offering is already on the ships, but in form of a strain gauge. So they put 6 strain gauges, 10 strain gauges, or fiber bright rating based. And apparently some of the end users don't want more data. So that's what we want, because that's how they get their certificate from the Lloyd's registered and DNV, the likes of DNVs. So the idea is that we have to go to the operators and the ship owners and tell them that we can offer a lot more, and then convince them that this is a much better technology that not only can offer what the current technology can offer, but can offer a lot more and can save them a lot more money. That is the plan.
Okay, so I've actually had a couple of questions from a few people about insurers, so working with insurers. So kind of what has feedback been from them?
We are going to have initial discussion with them to basically, but again, that's a longer term, because convincing the Lloyd's registered and DNVs that this is a very more advanced sensing technology compared to the long-based strain gauges, that takes much longer. So initially, we are gonna just discuss with the ship owners to convince them to retrofit this technology on their existing ship and how they can save money. And then going forward, we are going to have that discussion with the Lloyd's registered, DNVs, ADPs, to convince them to make this as a standard technology and do the certification based on this technology rather than the conventional strain gauges.
Okay. So Elias would like to know, so you gather all of this data and processing it must take that computational resource and time. How is that factored into your business model?
The idea is that we want to do edge computing. So we have all the data. We should have a powerful computer, analyze the data, ideally in the future with the machine learning, and then just give that data to the owners, or we can do it through cloud. If we can get linked with these big companies that they do these shipboard condition monitoring already, they have this cloud-based systems on board that we can use to take advantage and to transfer the data to the end users.
Thank you. That's all we have time for. I know there were loads more on the list, so please do go and speak to Ali at the expo and ask him your questions. Thank you very much. It's very hard to clap while you're holding the iPad. I would now like to introduce to the stage Farah Comis.
The future of AI and quantum will depend on photonic chips, but today they are incredibly difficult to build and scale. My name is Farah, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Altro Photonics. Silicon has hit its wall. We need to look at what is next. Integrated photonics is the next generation of how we're going to get to market in the data center space, and we are building that. As I mentioned, AI data centers are now requiring a lot of energy, and not one single material can do everything, especially because silicon has hit its performance limits. So if you're trying to build an interconnect and you're trying to get devices such as lasers, modulators, detectors, you're looking at different material platforms. And unfortunately, not one single material can do everything. And so there's a challenge today of integrating these materials all together on a single chip/substrate. It is a pain for customers that need to go through different suppliers, manage a complex supply chain, and bring all of these materials together on the same stack. Not one process design kit, which is a library of components, is multi-material and can combine all of this. It slows down their time to market and also reduces their their performances in terms of energy consumption, speed, and footprint. And so at Altro Photonics, we are fixing that. We're one platform, one supplier, where we combine all of the materials together using a proprietary stack. And this will enable us to bring together these very attractive materials, such as barium titanate for energy efficient modulation, silicon germanium for detection, silicon nitride for low loss routing, all of these materials which are crucial for them. So if we manage to solve this integration problem, we would open a market that nobody serves today. What markets are we looking into? We're looking into the fast optical interconnect market that is growing at a massive rate, and also quantum computing, as our platform can serve all of these applications that require high switching speeds as well as low energy in switching. Why are we the team to build it? We are the only team that has materials to system, so end-to-end overarch, looking into all of the complexity of how to get a photonic chip. So we have, myself, I've been designing integrated photonic chips in different material platforms, so from 3.5 to lithium niobate, and I just completed my PhD, where I looked into developing the fastest and lowest driving voltage modulators in silicon nitride and BTO. So I've lived the problem. I was on the quest to look for the silicon of photonics in the last few years. And I've worked with Alfonso, who has built out PDKs in silicon photonics over the last couple of years. He's worked at IMEC and now is associate professor at UCL and is joining the spin out. And Rob, our latest joiner, he's our founding engineer, and he's developing the process to get this to life. How do we get to our end target, which is to own the full stack platform? So right now we have our proof of concept, which is to bond the energy efficient barium titanate material, which will revolutionize the way that we switch within data centers, with the low loss silicon nitride. So really we have an advantage on energy consumption and footprint. The next stage is integrate transmitters, so light sources, to then build our full transceiver. And that unlocks a massive market at $14 billion. So we are going to start raising our pre-seed round. We're looking for £2 million with a 24-month runway to get us to our first customer samples that we can then test and deliver to them, and then sign a foundry partnership to go at scale and sign more reference customers. So without Altro Photonics, the future won't exist. So please join us to achieve this goal.
Thank you, Farah. I'm going to say it again. Please scan the QR code and get your questions in for Farah. But I have a couple just here. So Dave would like to know, where are you in the development?
That is a great question. So right now we are developing the energy efficient modulator in barium titanate, so BTO, on the low loss silicon nitride platform. So we are currently sandwiching these two materials together using our proprietary stack.
Okay. Cam would like to know, so what is the availability of the materials you're putting together for this solution, and what does margin look like now versus when you're at scale?
So the availability of the materials, we only want to work with materials that can be CMOS compatible, so that can enter a foundry, for instance. We don't want to take any risk with materials that are not yet scalable. And so BTO has been the material that we believe will really change integrated photonics, especially with power consumption being a problem and coupled with the footprint problem. So yes, we're only looking at CMOS compatible materials, essentially.
Okay. I don't know if that says Simon. It's a little cut off. So have you looked at growing neuromorphic computing field as a user, especially with edge chips like Intel's?
Yes, we have looked at that as a potential market. It's still very early days as a market, but it's definitely one. Yes, we're looking at the interconnect space as our first beachhead.
So James would like to know, what are the competing techs trying to do to solve this problem?
That is a great question. So you have companies that have a silicon photonics platform today, and they're looking to integrate materials on that. But it's the integration method is limited in terms of what it can do. And so with Altro Photonics, it's the architecture of how we bring the materials together that is different to what our competitors are doing. And for the people who are looking into BTO, our edge is that we don't just stop at BTO. BTO is just the first go-to-market. It's the first entry point to differentiate us from what is out there today.
So, big question from Olivia. So the UK's AI hardware plan just announced that it's dedicating just over $1 billion to the AI hardware sector, with photonics obviously being a core pillar of this. So how do you see the UK leading in photonics technology?
Yes, so I'm a big believer that we need to do something about the infrastructure today with photonics, because we can really be a leader in this. And we have great companies that are building in the interconnect space, and there's so much talent and expertise everywhere. So you have 3.5 in Cardiff, you have Silicon Photonics in Southampton, but nobody's really bringing all of this together. And so at Altro Photonics, we want to be the place that merges all of these expertise and process and basically bridge that gap between materials and system. So we want to be that player in the market. And I think we're really well placed today with the strategy of the government. So
I think we all look forward to seeing that. I guess a question from Callum kind of leads on nicely to that. So, like, what's your approach going to be to working with these major foundries, and how will you convince them to adopt your technology?
That is a great question. So the way we're going to do it is we will depend on our customers. And so with customer pull, it will allow us to really, go into these foundries, go into high volume production, but we need to first start working with them, and then they will be locked into our PDK essentially. So once they start to work with our platform, they will stay with our platform, and then we work with the foundries to get their products manufactured.
Okay, and speaking of customers, Alan would like to know, so is this kind of capital intensive? How much money do you need before you can get to revenue?
That is a great question. So it really depends on what business model we would follow. So we've looked into a couple of approaches, some that are less capital intensive, some that are more. I'd say if we want to own the full vertical stack, it would be quite CapEx intensive, but if we are looking at, co-developing with a foundry, then that would require less capital.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Farah. That's all we have time for right now, but please do see Farah outside at the expo.
Thank you.
And absolutely last, but definitely not least, I'd like to welcome to the stage Theo Rangarajan.
Hi there, I am Theo Rangarajan, and we are Luminetic. We make the world's first digital optical computers, replacing conventional transistors with integrated lasers to achieve a massive step change in compute energy efficiency. Moore's law is dead. Transistors are hitting the fundamental physics wall, delaying the inevitable. Each new chip generation costs exponentially more for diminishing gains. Complexity compounds and returns shrink. To meet these increased costs, over £1 trillion is promised for data center scale-up by 2030. But this is unsustainable economics hidden by the AI boom. Once investment normalizes, only a handful of mega corporations will afford scale compute. But the one thing even money cannot buy is power. We do not have the supply, and demands will more than double by 2030. The UK cannot even provide permits for any new data center for the next 2 years. This is so bad that we are now hitting the nuclear button. Power stations built surrounding every new data center, each one a 10-year project and still not meeting projected demand. We need a new paradigm to follow to save the global compute industry. We solve this 50-year, multi-trillion-pound problem. and a 1000x boost to compute energy efficiency, enabled by the world's first fully optical memory and light-speed logic, dwarfing both NVIDIA and our photonics competitors. Our costs of goods is less than half that of electronics, thanks to simpler wafer fab and novel optical packaging. But the biggest thing, drop-in compatibility with all current software and hardware infrastructure. Zero electronic signal processing, plug and play. Just imagine the world's most powerful data center running off a few dozen plugs. We have had multiple fabrication runs validating our technology. MVP design is in final stages with competitor benchmarking done, and we have a patent filed on the core logic and memory architecture. Negotiations are ongoing with IQE, Plessey, and other fabs to scale us to thousands of wafers a week. We've built a stellar advisory board of key industry decision makers, and we are in final stages of spin-out from the university. We enter the AI industry. Within it, the key hardware decision makers are the hyperscalers who build these data centers. This is a recurring £400 billion industry, with every data center required to replace their GPUs this decade. Due to competition, margins are squeezed under 5%. They're looking for any edge they can get. To this end, they already test non-NVIDIA hardware and often operate at small batches, perfect for pilot runs. But 400 billion is not all. Portable compute applications will scale your battery life from hours to weeks, and our radiation resistance is perfectly positioned for space and defense markets. I am CEO. I'm currently finishing my PhD at the University of Southampton. I also have experience designing GPUs on TSMC 2 nanometer at Apple. My co-founder, Stefan, he also has a PhD in photonics, but he is non-technical, multiple-time founder with COO and CFO experience at other startups. And Fred, eminent professor with more than 400 published papers and more than £50 million raised for photonics research. You can see some of our advisors here as well. We are raising £10 million to get to market, aiming to get 3 paid pilots by the end of 2027. This scales us to 3 full fabrication runs at scale fabs, aggressive hiring of top semiconductor talent, and the speed necessary to start to displace industry leaders. Join us in redefining computing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theo. So for the last time this afternoon, please get your phones out, scan the QR code, and get your questions into Theo. So I do have one question, and I think this is not the first time you've been asked this. Why 10 million? That seems like a lot for a pre-seed round.
It certainly does. Well, if you look at our particular competitors, even in the UK, I mean, just recently we heard about Fractile, we heard about Olix, both raising £220 million without patents, product, or customers. Well, Fractile kind of, but Olix certainly not. We have had multiple fabrication runs. We have validated our technology. This puts us firmly beyond a lot of what they have without the CapEx requirements that they have already spent.
And so with some of these companies that we know, and obviously the existing kind of big players, like how does Luminetic differ from other optical computing companies?
So the major thing is the drop-in compatibility. We implement standard electronic architectures, the stuff that's been around for the last 50 years, but instead of using electronics, we use optics. This means that if we were to use RISC-V, maybe even with vector extensions, we're compatible with all RISC-V software. You just move your signals from the optical to the electronic domain, or even start them in the optical domain, and it's drop-in compatible. The one thing that these hyperscalers care more about than power is downtime, and we minimize that.
And, where will this 10 million get you to in the next 2 years?
So that takes us to three pilots in industry with these hyperscalers or neoclouds. This provides the validation that we need to raise a significantly larger round, probably, trying to match the Olix and the Fractiles of the world, and allowing us to really start scaling to market.
So what I'm hearing there is a lot of great investment opportunity for now and the future, people. That's what I'm hearing. So with this kind of overhaul of kind of such a integral piece of technology, like how do you achieve software compatibility?
So during my PhD, I designed the core logic gates and the core memory cells, which your standard chip design software uses to make the chip. So if we're designing one of these chips, we'll get the architecture, we'll stick in our PDK, and with a little bit of poking around, it'll throw out a chip we can tape out. So the only requirement that there is to run the same software is you're compatible with the instruction set. And so if we can ensure that, we can ensure compatibility with the entire software stack.
Okay, so Cam has asked, and I've had a couple of questions about this. So this round will give you 24 months runway, by which point you plan to raise $1 billion plus kind of valuation. Did I read that right? And if so, what does the ideal investor look like to you?
The ideal investor for us is, well, one that has the profits, but also ones that have the key network within semiconductors, within photonics, more so within computing, actually. We want people who know these fabs, who can understand technology and even provide like referees to the really top VCs to start scaling us.
That's great. And I think something that we're obviously all very conscious with in this AI world at the moment is, like, you've talked about power reduction, and Ron would like to know, does your innovation also tackle the cooling issues that data centers struggle with?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 30 to 40% of the power consumption within these data centers is just the cooling. So you get rid of the power of the chip, and you get this kind of double whammy, removing the power yet again. So you can imagine the power, and I'm guessing the water, what's that referring there, consumption goes right down. Now, I think we don't have a say over how people are cooling their data centers. This is not the product that we're making, but the lower power that you require often means that circulatory systems are much more feasible, and you actually don't need any water whatsoever.
Kumi has asked, with this size of pre-seed round, would moving the HQ of the company make a difference in outcome, e.g. Sri Lanka? So I feel like maybe you can tap Kumi up for his Sri Lankan contacts.
That's an interesting one. I don't know Sri Lanka. We can definitely have a chat.
Obviously, we were out in Silicon Valley,
well, yeah,
right?
of course,
so...
that's the obvious one. The most likely method we're going to go is your standards, Delaware Topco, UK Subco. What we have found is the majority of the talent that we would actually need to hire is in the UK and Europe. So with specifically engineering in France and in the UK, that's where we will scale fastest on that point. Of course, investment appetites in the US are much higher. I'm sure we can take advantage of that later down the line. But for now, talent is the important part.
And we've just got time for one last question before we finish up. So transistors have underpinned your target markets for decades. How will you build trust with your customers given the radically different approach?
So first thing to say is, compared to our competitors, it takes much less trust for them to actually adopt our tech. With other companies, they'll need to completely rewrite their software stacks and completely rip out data centers and put new stuff in order to even begin to test their technology. With us, you will take out our competitors' TPUs or GPUs, slot in ours, and it just works. So in terms of a pilot, we can just send them a box of our GPUs or TPUs. We'll stick it in, and they can test it on their desk.
That sounds great. Thank you very much, Theo. That's all we have time for. Please do go and find Theo at the expo. So I'd like to take this opportunity to give our amazing founders one very big round of applause. Well done. And thank you so much for coming today and seeing them. And the fun is absolutely not over yet. So I'd really encourage you to go out to the expo, grab a drink, grab some food, and speak to our founders. And the founders that have been pitching here on stage today will be out there. There's some founders from our AI cohort, Silicon Photonics from previous years. There's a great community of people at different stages of their journey. And I think something that's the most rewarding thing for me as part of my job is seeing them on this journey and seeing the personal transformations that they go through. I won't call any of them out personally right now, but I think they know who they are. And for me, this is just absolutely incredible to have days like today where we get to celebrate. But it's not about the ending. It's really absolutely about the journey that they go on. So this starts much longer ago than what you see today. Not 6 months, maybe even longer than that. And so that wouldn't be possible without our team that kind of helps to tell everybody that Future Wilds exists, to go out and meet those people that wouldn't call themselves a founder yet. They don't, they might not even have an idea yet. And so I'd like to introduce you to a member of our team tonight who will be one of the first people that founders, when they come to Future Worlds, will get to meet. And that's our head of engagement, Grace Burton.
Didn't think I'd plan an event without getting Taylor Swift in there, did you? Told you I was going to do it. So you have all this afternoon had the privilege, I think, of witnessing 6 incredible pictures. I get the privilege, normally on a rainy, November weekend, of witnessing 30, sometimes 40, 60-second pictures that I'm going to say are a little bit less polished than what you see today. But it's my privilege of meeting individuals who are just a student, who are just a researcher, who just have an idea, who are just working on some IP. And then I get the privilege of coming back today. Don't tend to see them once I've waved them off into the cohort. I get to come back to see them today and think, yeah, I'm so pleased that you took a chance on us, that you came along to that bootcamp weekend. You let us open your brain, brainwash you a little bit, show you what's possible, get you to ask why not, and really, really importantly, show you how many people want to back you, how many people believe in brilliant people trying to make good change in the world. And that is a privilege we get every single day. Many of these founders, whether today or that we work with through various art programs, are solo founders, but none of them are doing it alone. Not because they can't, but because they need them. Because there are people like all of you in rooms like this who get it, who believe that universities are incredible places from which to launch startups, and know that we have to wrap support around fantastic people like this to go on and change the world. So I am stood between you and an open bar. So I am going to explain what happens now, and then I have got an ask of you. So please do stick around. We hope you're excited for these 6 people, the other 15 or so out at the back, and that you want to keep grilling them and ask the questions you didn't get to ask. And we are going to make them all stand up there for an hour and get grilled. Then we're going to get a bit more relaxed. We've got the food trucks arriving. The drinks will continue to flow. And then on Ben's insistence, even when we're kicked out of the venue tonight at 9 o'clock, we'll be carrying on the fun up at the fire station by Waterloo. But please do go out into that expo when you sit down with some food, with a drink. Sit down next to the founder and ask how you can help. In that spirit, I need to ask for your help, because I'm going to ask the founders to come up on stage. I promise you this is the very last thing before we start to enjoy the drinks. I'm going to get all the founders on stage. I'm going to get Ben and Alice up on stage as well. I'm going to ask Becky to come down here. It's so bright here that she might be there and I can't see her. I'm going to ask all of you to do 2 things. The very, very talented ones of you might do both. Either get that phone out, take a picture, put it on LinkedIn, say you had a great time. Or whoop, clap, make some noise. If you think you can manage doing both, please do both. We're going to grab one quick picture and then we're going to let you go and get a drink. Alice on the step. Right, go on then, make some noise.